Hey guys, welcome back to my channel, and for those of you that are new here, hey, my name is Tenna and welcome to my circus. Happy quarantine, guys. Not happy quarantine, but here we are, day 16, 17 of quarantine, and like a lot of you guys, I am incredibly bored. I probably should have been pushing out far more content, but unfortunately I fell into the dull laziness that is the quarantine lazies. So yeah, I'm finally filming content because I need to stop being lazy, and I've got all the time in the world to do it right now. Welcome back to my series. I started a new series last month, my Makeup and Murder series, where I do my makeup and I tell you guys story about different murders, true crime stuff, anything that kind of like sparks my interest, things that I think you guys will be interested in. So if you have been living under a rock, the main thing that's kind of blowing up during this quarantine is the Tiger King, aka Joe Exotic, which is by far the most insane series I've ever watched in my entire life. I think I was like for the majority of that series, because it's almost like unbelievable the things that happen. Like every time you think that it can't get any crazier, it gets crazier. And besides the unique character that Joe Exotic is, I was very much intrigued by the story of Carole Baskin, who is his sworn enemy, and the disappearance of her last husband, who everybody swears up and down killed and fed to her big cats, her tigers, her lions, whatever. But yeah, if you have not watched that series yet, I totally advise you to go watch it. You won't regret it. So what I did some research. I wanted to dive a little bit deeper into the story of Carole Baskin. What freaking happened? What's her story? Why does she seem so crazy? Literally, you watch her mannerisms, the way she talks, the way she like laughs about things that are like not funny. She's a literal psychopath.
The ownership of money and property comes from doing things in a certain way. Those who do things in a certain way, whether on purpose or accidentally, get rich.
The scary part is like, I know she's big on like YouTube herself, so like watch her find this and like whatever. I think you're crazy. So before we hop into this, tiny disclaimer for those of you guys that saw my first murder and makeup episode that I did go through and tell you guys the makeup products that I was using as I was telling the story, which I didn't really like as I was editing. I found it to be incredibly distracting and kind of took away from the storyline. It's a little bit weird to talk about murder and like really interesting details and be like, oh, and I'm using this lipstick. It's just killed the vibe. So I will detail every single product that I am using in the description box down below. So if you guys have questions on what lipstick I'm using, eyeshadows, foundation, what shade I am, that's going to be in the description box below. But let's go ahead and jump right on into the story. So this whole entire thing starts off with Carole being incredibly young. This goes back to January of 1981, right? So Carole is the ripe age of 17 years old, and she meets this man that becomes her husband, and his name is Mike Murdoch. And you know, they have a child, whatever, but she meets him at an incredibly young age and decides to settle down. Unfortunately for her, a lot of these relationships that she's had at a young age, whether it be family or these, you know, relationships that she has or whatever have you be, it kind of shape the person that she becomes. She is unfortunately a victim of a lot of like really bad abusive relationships, and unfortunately I think that it kind of developed her into this person that she is now and kind of the reputation that she has. The year is 1981. She is married to Mike Murdoch, and it's pretty common at this point for Mike to beat up on her pretty regularly. He's very physically abusive, and it's something that she's kind of used to. And one particular night, they get into a pretty bad argument, and she just kind of snaps and she decides to throw a whole ass potato at him. That's the only thing that she had. She was like, I'm done. You gonna catch this potato in the side of your head. So she threw the potato at him, and almost immediately she's like, oh, I done fucked up. Maybe I shouldn't have done that. Because at this point she's like, he's going to, and these are her words, quote unquote, beat me within an inch of my life, which is an incredibly scary situation to be in. So before he can actually get his hands on her, she books it. She runs out of the house. And she runs as long and as far as she can to try to escape this man that is basically going to just destroy her if he gets his hands on her. So Carole is jumping fences, she's running through backyards, she runs forever until she gets to a point several hours later that she feels that she's safe to come out of hiding and just kind of starts walking around town. And she finds herself in a really shady part of town, just not a lot of good people. It's pretty ghetto. And she is this young 17, 18-year-old beautiful girl. She's blonde, she's got big blue eyes as they describe her, and she's walking down the street in the middle of the night in a sketchy area, quote unquote, basically asking for trouble. As she's walking down the street, you know, of course, men are stopping and they're asking if they can give her a ride somewhere. Can I take you somewhere? Are you okay? Whatever. She turns them all down, you know, stranger danger. We ain't getting in cars with strangers. So what happens next is there's a man that pulls up in a sedan and does the same thing that every other man has done up to this point. Pulls over, asks her if she needs a ride. Are you okay? You know, kind of thing. And she tells him, no, I'm fine. Leave me alone. And he takes off. So, you know, a little bit later, the same man comes back around again and pulls over, which is like super stranger danger at this point. He asks her to get in the car. He's got a revolver sitting on the passenger seat of his vehicle and basically tells her straight up, I just want somebody to talk to. If you get in the car, you can hold the gun on me to make sure that I won't do anything to hurt you. I just need someone to talk to. And she gets in. So this right here, I'm telling you, this is already how I know Carole is crazy as hell. Who in their right mind would ever get into a car with a stranger? Mind you, a stranger that has a gun on a seat that straight up says, you can hold this on. Like, who does that? Did we not learn anything about the serial killer craze that just happened? Carole, it's 1981. We are in the midst of like serial killer century. Like, did we not learn anything? Did we not learn about the Ted Bundys of the world? Did we not learn about the Ed Kempers of the world? Did we not learn any of these things? Why on earth would you get in a car with somebody you don't know that offers you a gun, that you know has a gun? You are out of your fucking mind. You're a literal lunatic. But anyway, end rant. So what happens at this point, they drive around town for a few hours, and she's like, if you listen to her interview on this, she's like giggling like a little schoolgirl the entire time she's talking about this, which is also flippin' insane to me. And she's laughing about this. She's saying, you know, we drove all around town for several hours and we just talked and we just talked and we just talked. And so then at one point, he pulls the car over and she thinks, oh, this is where I die. Are we surprised, Carole? Are we surprised that a sketchy man that pulled over with a gun is now pulling over and you're thinking that he might kill you? Yeah. So at this point, as expected, he reaches over, grabs her around her throat, and says, and I quote, I got it written down here. He states, "You know I could choke the life out of you right now, right?" And cool as a cucumber, Carole nods, like he just asked her, do you like chocolate? Like it was just totally normal for her, which mind you, probably was. She's used to being in incredibly abusive relationships at this point. So it's probably all that she knows. But I just feel like your typical woman that is not in abusive relationships would have been like, get me out of here. So, yeah, anyways, he was incredibly taken back by her reaction to him. She didn't scream, she didn't freak out, she didn't do anything. She was just cool and calm and was like, yeah, I'm aware. You're probably killing me right now, whatever. And because of this, he kind of takes a step back and it's like, oh, this woman is interesting. This whole thing's wild to me. And she states that he then takes his hands and decides to massage her shoulders at this point, after threatening that he could choke her out if he wanted to. So after this incredibly awkward exchange of, wow, okay Tina, I just threw my bronzer brush at my new palette and look at that big ol' hole I just put in it. Tragic. After this incredibly crazy exchange of words that they have about I could kill you right now, he then asked her to stay the night with him. Quote unquote, no funny business. And she decides to go with him. This whole thing is just crazy to me. So she decides to go with him, and they go to this really sleazy like motel, hotel, Holiday Inn, whatever type place, basically where like, you know, truck drivers go to like hook up with like hookers, and like it's just a dirty motel type deal, right? So he keeps his word. So they get to this motel, and she says that he pulls out like an old pair of pajamas and gives them to her to wear, and they spend the night together, and he doesn't try anything. He doesn't try to you know, do anything sexual with her. He doesn't try to attack her. He doesn't do anything like that. And because of this, because mind you that Carole is so used to being abused, this is the first time a man has ever done anything quote unquote nice for her and didn't you know, expect something in return, like sex or favors or something like that. And she states, because of this, I instantly fell in love with him. So ooh, I told you, it's a wild story, and it gets crazier. After she decides that she is head over heels in love with him and whatever have you be it, they decide to have an affair. Oh, and sorry, I totally left out the guy's name. He introduced himself as Bob Martin. And how he got her into his vehicle was basically stating that he had gotten into a fight with his, you know, wife and was kicked out. He was on his own and he needed company, was basically what happened there. They're having a full-blown affair, and it's very common for her to call his place of business and ask for Bob Martin, and she's always patched through. She's able to talk to him, all these different things. And so at a point, they get a brand new secretary. So one day she calls, and she asks for Bob Martin, and the secretary tells her, there's nobody by the name of Bob Martin here. There's never been anybody by the name of Bob Martin here. I have no clue who you're talking about. And she's like, oh no, he must have gotten fired. And she was like, no, I promise you, we've never had like a Bob Martin work here before. And she's asked Carole, can you describe him? And this highlight, yeah, he's mid-40s, he's kind of blonde. He's the assistant to Don Lewis. And so the assistant or secretary or whatever starts laughing hysterically because she's like, you're describing Don Lewis. There's nobody here by the name of Bob Martin. So at this point, Carole's like, what the hell is going on? And later on, she decides to confront him on it. And she's like, what the hell's going on? You've told me that your name is Bob Martin. And your secretary says that you're really Don Lewis. Like, who the hell are you? Is kind of what happens there. And he confesses, and he was like, yep, you know, my name is Don Lewis. I'm not Bob Martin. You know, I wanted to make sure that you actually loved me for me and not my money. And she's like, oh. Unbeknownst to her, Don Lewis is flipping loaded. And by loaded, like he is multi-millionaire status type thing. So he wanted to make sure that Carole would actually like him for him. She decides she's okay with that, and they decide to continue on with their affair. Don Lewis, as we know him now, you know, like I said, he's married, he's got kids with his wife, and one of his daughters one day comes home from wherever she was at, and she walks into her house and she finds some woman in her kitchen making dinner. And she describes this woman as, you know, somebody in their mid-20s kind of thing. And, you know, she goes in and she's like, hey, what the hell's going on here? Daughter, her name's Linda, realizes that she recognizes her from a few weeks earlier because she had met her dad for something and she was with him. At that time, she was introduced to her as Martha. And now this time her dad has introduced her as Carole. And so his daughter is kind of like, Dad, I'm not stupid. Like, I met this woman a few weeks ago. Like, which one is it? Like, who is this woman that's in our house, in our kitchen, making dinner? Don Lewis pulls his daughter aside, basically is like, don't tell your mom, you know, keep this between you and I. Linda, being a good daughter, of course, she goes and tells her mother. And it turns out that her mother was very much aware of his infidelities and, you know, things like this that he would do. This was just nothing new. This isn't the first time that he's done it. And at this point, this was where his wife had enough. She's like, I'm done. I've been dealing with this forever. You've been unfaithful multiple times. I'm done. I want a divorce. They go through and they get a divorce. Almost immediately, he decides to turn around and now marry Carole, his little 25-year-old thing that he found on the side of the road. And, you know, their wedding was described as not the most glamorous. They got married in blue jeans at a courthouse wedding, and they celebrated at Wendy's afterwards, is how it was described. And it was just a interesting little wedding, to say the least. And so the thing that she realized is that, yeah, Don had a lot of money, but he was also incredibly frugal. He grew up really poor, and he ended up making a name for himself, first by, you know, buying and selling like trailer parts, and then eventually he got into real estate, investing into small properties, things like that, became this millionaire, right? Carole claims that after they got married, she helped him, quote unquote, build this empire and contributed to what would eventually be his fortune, whatever have you be it. While they're doing all their real estate things, they decide one day that they want to go to a auction to buy some llamas to eat the grass that's growing on some of these properties and things like that. Kind of like a more economic way of taking care of the grounds, the property, right? While they're there, she's noticing, you know, there's pigs and cows and llamas and reptiles and all these kinds of things. And at one point, they bring out a little bobcat. Carole was instantly intrigued by this bobcat because she actually had raised bobcats from the time that she was a teenager. They were like not new territory for her, and she was very much intrigued when she saw it. So immediately the man sitting right next to her starts bidding on getting this bobcat. And so, you know, her being her, she kind of leans over to the guy and she tells him, you know, I hope you know what you're betting on. When that cat grows up, it's going to rip your face off, is basically the way that she explained it to him. And the guy straight up tells her, oh, I do taxidermy. That cat's not going to make it out of the parking lot alive. I'm just going to club it over the head and, you know, use it for my taxidermy business. She immediately gets offended, and she decides to tell her husband, Don, that she wants to have this bobcat because she wants to save it from being killed. So they bet on this bobcat, spent way more on it than they probably should have, and now they get to take home this bobcat. You know, she says they take it home and immediately it's a complete pain in the ass animal to have. It's always attacking Dawn and just always kind of, it's just a very feisty animal. So they decided that they just wanted more. Maybe he needs a friend, whatever. Her and her husband end up going to this place. They go into this warehouse and there's just cages upon cages upon cages. And she's like wondering like, where are all these little baby bobcats coming from? Like, and asked the guy straight up, like, are there really that many people in the world that like want to buy these as pets? Like, why do you have so many? And he tells her straight up, and he's like, oh no, these aren't for pets. Like, I'm a fur farm. And she turns around and sees this massive pile of dead bobcats that are going to be used, their pelts are going to be used for whatever, coats, things like that, right? She is absolutely mortified. Dawn sees that she's absolutely mortified and then asks the guy straight up, how much would it cost for us to have all of them? So that day, because they are frivolous spending, they decide to buy 56 freaking bobcats in one day, which is absolutely insane to me. By the way, I'm really loving this palette. Everything's really nice in here. So they get these 56 bobcats. They have nowhere to put them. They start filling up their house with all of these cages to keep them in, and she's like trying to run this real estate business still from home, and there's like bobcats on everything. So as a result, because they have all 56 of these freaking animals, they decide to start their own little business called Wildlife on Easy Street, right? So she starts breeding and selling the cubs of these bobcats, which is like the opposite of what you would do with trying to save animals. So, you know, she found herself being a regular at the auctions quite a bit. And then one day she goes and there is a specific bobcat that is up for auction, and she recognizes it instantly. And she's like, I know this bobcat. Like, I raised this bobcat. Like, this is one of mine. And it was being sold for its fur. And she's automatically mortified. You know, the light bulb finally goes off for her. Ding, ding, ding. Holy shit, I'm contributing to the issue. Her being completely ignorant, thought that by breeding and selling them as pets to people, that she was keeping them from being extinct by breeding them, and that she thought that by people having them as pets, they would create a closer bond to them, making people less likely to harm or abuse these bobcats, right? And which is so far from the truth. It's just not what it is. So anyway, she freaks out. She goes home. She goes to Dawn and she's like, we messed up. Like, I can't do this. We can't breed and sell these anymore. Like, I want to run a sanctuary. I'm not breeding anymore. I just want to have a safe haven for these cats. So anyways, this is where you kind of see their relationship start to break down a little bit, because he does not want to start a sanctuary. And the way that everybody described him is that if there was one thing that he loved more than women and things like that, it was his money. He did not care about the welfare of the animals, who they were going to. He cared about all the money that he was making off of breeding and selling these cats, and he was not willing to stop doing that to create a sanctuary. And they started to really bump heads because, you know, they had a difference in opinion on how they should be running this business together. Where she was more into it for, you know, saving the cats, and he was more into it for the money. So this is where people say that they start to see a breakdown of their relationship and kind of how they're getting along and things like that. And basically they're not getting along at this point. She is very adamant on, you know, what she wants to do with the sanctuary. They're not getting along. It's causing them to fight a whole bunch. And at this time, Dawn has the secretary. Her name is Anne. It's very, very, very close confidant for him. He relies on her for a lot. It's kind of, she's kind of become his like go-to person. Like when things are going wrong or whatever, like he goes to Anne first, even over his wife. So one day, you know, he goes into Anne, he's letting her know, like, you know, we keep getting into fights. I don't know if this is gonna work out. I don't know what's going on, whatever. So this continues on for a while, and then one day in particular, he comes in and he tells her, tells Anne straight up, like, this isn't going to work. She's doing things against, you know, my wishes, things like that. And it's just, it's not gonna work out between us. I'm gonna go home and ask for a divorce. And Anne is like, yeah, this is pretty bad. Like, I've never seen him be so done before, and he's over it. He doesn't want anything to do with her. And so he hands Anne an envelope, and he straight up tells her, I'm going home to ask for a divorce. If I come up missing, make sure that the police get this. And before Anne is able to say, what is this, he runs out the door. She took it home. She really didn't think about it until he came up missing. The next day he comes in, he's over the moon frustrated. They're sharing their lunch, they're sitting there talking about it. He's letting her know that he's gonna go home and ask for a divorce. you know, he's packing up his things. He's getting ready to move to Costa Rica for a good part of the year, because he always flew back and forth from Costa Rica. That's where he did a lot of his breeding for these big cats. It's where they got a lot of their cubs, because at one point, outside of bobcats, they started getting into lions and tigers and leopards and different types of things like that. And he was able to get them by flying down to Costa Rica and obtaining them that way. So to continue with that piece of the business, he decided to basically move down to Costa Rica for a good part of the year. So anyway, he's just like, I'm done. I'll see you when I see you, and heads out and leaves. And Anne doesn't think anything of it until, you know, a day goes by and she hasn't heard from him, and she tries to contact him every day that weekend, and just like, where the hell is Don? Like, and she straight up says, she's like, him and I were so close. Like, yeah, it was normal for him if he gets into an argument with his wife or whatever, you know, he would, you know, maybe go MIA for 2 days, but it wasn't common for him to go MIA for 2 days and not answer my phone calls. He would never not answer Anne's phone calls. So at this point, she's just freaking out. She finally, after the weekend, on Monday, she calls Carole and she's like, yo, like, where's Don? And she's like, I don't know, I haven't seen him since yesterday. And she's like, okay, well, I've been trying to call him all weekend, I can't get a hold of him. And listening to the interview, it's crazy, because Carole showed up, like, she starts laughing about it, and she's like, oh my goodness, like, it's not that big of a deal. Like, really, this is what Don does. He disappears. Like, why are you freaking out? Should I be calling the cops? Should I be reporting him missing? And Anne was like, yeah, you should. This isn't normal. Like, how do you not know this? You're his wife. So anyways, so once they have that conversation, she decides to call the police, and by she, I mean Carole. She decides to call the police and she reports Don missing. Sorry, I had to take a momentary break to do my winged eyeliner. I cannot talk and do winged eyeliner at the same time. So anyways, the date is August 19th of 1997 that Carole decides to report him missing. And detectives get involved, and when she reports him missing, it's exactly 1 day since Carole claims that she has saw him, and 4 days since Anne has claimed that she has spoken with him as well. Carole stated that he had left the day before, and stated that he had to leave really, really early to go to Miami, and then also makes some type of claim that his family denies, that he was starting to suffer from early onset of dementia or like Alzheimer's or something along those lines. And his family is like, BS, like, we know him, he was very sharp, he was not showing signs of dementia or anything like that. So she is like doing this whole sob story of like, I should have protected him, I should have saved him, like, I shouldn't have let him go by himself, he had Alzheimer's, whatever, which just seems really unlikely. And they decide, they find his van, and they find it at a small airport. Detectives look into it. They don't suspect any foul play, and they try to look for maybe a plane that he was on. There was no planes that came out of that airport that went down, went missing, crashed, anything like that. So there's no quote-unquote foul play going on there. So in the meantime, while all of this crap is going down, police are looking, there's no hospital records, there's no nothing of that nature. And his secretary, you know, they're going to work, business as usual. They're expecting him to maybe like turn up at some point. So the assistant to Anne looks over and is like, Anne, like, what about that envelope that he gave you? And Anne was like, oh shit, I forgot about that. So she leaves and she goes home, and she says that she digs around in this drawer until she can find it again. She opens up the envelope, and what she is looking at, and she is floored, is a petition from Don for a restraining order against Carole. And inside of this, with this restraining order, was also a laundry list of detailed encounters that he has had with Carole, you know, stating why he needs this restraining order against her. And basically states the reason why he decided to get this restraining order at this point is because in this argument, this past argument they had, this was the second time that she had actually physically threatened to kill him as a result of their argument. She making verbal threats saying she's gonna kill him. And because of that, you know, she took his gun. She claims that she was incredibly verbally abusive. She was physically abusive and was claiming, you know, death threats. He was claiming great bodily injury, all of these different things against her. Unfortunately for him, the judge actually denied his petition for a restraining order against her. Armed with this, Anne is like, holy shit, like, there were problems. She was threatening to kill him. Like, oh my God, like, I gotta take this to the police. So she runs, she goes to the police, and they're kind of like, yeah, no, you know, it was denied. Obviously, if it was denied for some whatever reason, there must have been a reason. They looked into it. They said they went and talked to Carole. Carole came across as very nice, very sweet, very easy to talk to, and they didn't suspect her of being a person that would do that. I don't know who she paid off. After he disappeared, you know, his family held out hope that maybe he would turn back up again. Days turned into weeks, weeks turned into years, and they all kind of held out hope that maybe he was still alive, maybe he was out there. And obviously, as the years went by, the family really started to lose hope and think, you know what, I don't think he's coming home. And they're really pushing for the police to investigate Carole. They're not doing a good job. They get really, really upset, and this is where the rumor starts of they think that Carole killed him and fed him to the tigers and the lions, which doesn't seem far off. They had this meat grinder that they would use. They had asked the police several times to do DNA sampling of the meat grinder. They wouldn't do it. And now there's all these theories that, like, Dawn is somewhere buried on this property that she lives on, that she killed him, because if he was going to divorce her, that meant all the money was going to go away. She was going to be left with nothing. She wouldn't be able to afford this lavish lifestyle that she's been able to live. She wouldn't be able to continue on with this big cat sanctuary that she's running. She wouldn't be able to do any of these things. And she's like, spooked. That's what they think happened, is that he tried to ask for a divorce and she's like, over my dead body, you are not taking my money and my lifestyle, like, you can die. And that's my theory on what I think happened. This a massive battle over his estate begins, and based off of, you know, the feedback from the family, things like that, Carole had changed like all of these things in like his will to where basically his daughters only got like 10% of his estate, which is like really sad, and you wouldn't think that like a parent would do that to a child and all these things. You know, Carole swears up and down that some time before his disappearance that they got into a really big fight and he wanted to completely write them out of his will, but she convinced him that, oh, those are your children, you shouldn't do that, and convinced him to give them at least a little bit, which I think is BS. I feel like no parent does that to a child regardless. Like, most parents want to make sure that their children are taken care of over a spouse. So that whole thing was really interesting. And then on top of that, in order for Carole to collect his estate, and mind you, like, legally, when somebody goes missing, you cannot legally declare them dead until they have been missing with no leads for at least 5 years. So during this 5 years leading up to this point, Carole is struggle bussing. She has gotten down to her last $20,000. She's struggling to feed, you know, all these cats. It costs thousands upon thousands of dollars to feed these massive animals, and on top of that, at this point, they've managed to house like hundreds and hundreds of these animals. So basically, she's grasping for straws here, right? So exactly 5 years and a day of his noted disappearance, she files for him to be declared legally dead, which is insane to me. You would think that like your spouse that you love and care for, it's not that important, you're gonna hold out hope that they maybe come back. Nope. It was a day after it hit that 5-year mark, she filed that little document and she got cashed out immediately, millions. And she was automatically able to continue on with her cat sanctuary and continue doing whatever the hell it was that she was doing. With this whole thing with this like cat sanctuary and all of these things, you know, there's a lot of weird little like animal events and things that they go to, and there is this like gala that they do at this aquarium, and she always attends, you know, being the owner of this Easy Street whatever animal rescue. And she says that she goes one day And she walks in and she sees this man in this like really like tailored suit, and she's automatically like attracted to this man, right? So yeah, she sees this man. They both automatically find each other to be incredibly attractive, and she claims that this is a completely different relationship than one that she's ever been in before, because this man was like nice. He was nice to her. He wasn't, it didn't start off abusive. It didn't start off like anything. So it's kind of love at first sight. And 2 years later, they are married. This woman gets married a lot. I never understand how people with this many issues can get married that many times. Like, it's insane to me. And then you've got like decent human beings that like can't get a ring to save their life. But anyway, yeah, so they get married. And together, on their honeymoon, they decide to write out this 20-year plan of this is how we're going to kind of resurrect this big cat rescue or whatever. He kind of helped her turn everything around. So instead of it now being this easy street animal rescue, they changed the name to Big Cat Rescue, which is what it's known for now. And they spend all this money and they create this, you know, kind of wildlife sanctuary that now her current husband, Howard Baskin, is helping her run. And to this day, Carole is still openly running Big Cat Rescue. She's got a pretty massive following on YouTube, online, things of that nature. I think that she is absolutely fucking insane, and I don't understand how she's got so many fans. Maybe it'll be different after people watch this series, but she, to this day, has never really been fully investigated for the death of her husband, or not death, but disappearance of her husband. To this day, he has still been gone without a trace. Nobody knows what happened to him. They've never found a body. They've never done anything. And it doesn't seem that like Carole is by any means remorseful or misses him or anything of that nature. She seems to be just living life per usual and moved on pretty damn quick. So unfortunately, this is not a story with an ending and how it happened and who did what. It's still very much ongoing. I believe that they've reopened the case to figure out kind of what's going on, you know, with the pickup of the series and so much interest in it. There are so many people are like, we want the answers. We want Carole investigated. How do you not see that she didn't do this? Other things that you'll see in the series, kind of thing, where his attorney is even looking at some of like the will paperwork and things like that, where the will literally states, like most normal people say, like, in the unfortunate event of my death, you know, this is how my assets are divvied out. Before he disappeared, the will was literally changed to say, in the unfortunate event of my death or disappearance, which his attorney straight up was like, that is never, like, in all of my years of being an attorney or a lawyer or whatever, I have never in my life seen somebody put or my disappearance in a will. It's just never happened. And there's so many weird things that she changed and she manipulated. She screwed his ex-wife and kids out of any of his fortune. She took everything for herself. I 100% think that she did it. So this is where I'm interested to hear your guys' opinions. A couple theories that I've heard floating around there are my theory that she 100% killed him, probably fed him to the cats. He's probably buried on their property somewhere. I don't know. I mean, it's a pretty clean and easy way to get rid of a body. Even in the series, she always talks about you cover anything in sardine oil and like the cats will eat whatever. I'm like, did she roll him in sardine oil and throw him in the pit and kill him? I'm curious. Other people seem to think that he kind of vanished and is currently living life in Costa Rica and is just like not coming back. He was just like, I'm out, this bitch is crazy, I'm not sticking around for this. And so some people have their theory that maybe he's still alive, he's just laying low and hiding out because Carole is fucking crazy. And as much as I think Joe Exotic in the series is absolutely crazy himself, I don't think he's wrong. I think he's spot on. I think he's got something there saying that Carole Baskin is responsible for killing her ex-husband, and I 100% believe it. It's just, If you haven't watched the show, watch it. Watch her mannerisms, watch how she speaks, watch how she talks about it. She's way too eerily comfortable, calm, happy, and chipper about the whole thing. She doesn't seem like a person that lost a loved one. She doesn't seem distraught by it. Anytime that she's blamed by something, by a family member, like she literally sits there and laughs. Like it's not a big deal. Like somebody accused her of like spilling a soda. It is the weirdest thing. So, yeah, that's the details that I got on my research of Carole Baskin. So let me know your thoughts. Who do you think did it? What do you think happened to her ex-husband? What on earth happened? I want to know where Don Lewis is. So let me know your theories down below, your thoughts, your opinions. Where do you think he is? Where do you think he went? Maybe I left out some details. Let me know some cool facts that you figured out in the comments below. There's so many weird twists and turns that like I guarantee that I did not cover all the bases of the story. I did some serious research because there's a lot of things you can find out in the show, but there's a lot of other things that you can find out through reading various articles from the past, podcasts, different things like that. So that's all the information that I know, but let me know your thoughts. Thanks for hanging out with me, doing my makeup. I ended up with this cute little neutral glam pink lip look. First time I've done my makeup in 3 weeks, so kind of feel back to normal. But let me know if you guys want more murder and makeup stuff. We've got all this time inside now with the quarantine. I live in California, so we're locked down pretty heavy over here. Can't really leave your house for much. So I've got lots of time, lots of stories, lots of makeup. So thank you guys for hanging out with me. Hopefully this was a fun little murder makeup story for you. I will catch you guys in my next video. Bye guys.